He talks about how the Christians are practically mythologists as well. Look at all the insanity. A guy's having sex with his mother-in-law or stepmom or whatever.
Right. He's 400 years before this. So you're like, wait a minute. How is the Psalm of David talking about an event that happened? Is it supposed to be a prophecy?
This is the stepping stones toward critical scholarship.
Welcome back to the Gnostic Informant, and you are about to attain true gnosis. And today I wanted to talk about some upcoming stuff that I'm working on. I'm working on a video that has to do with the country, our country. Is this a Christian nation or not? And the reason why I'm even getting into this subject is because we see a lot of people, even in our government, even in the Senate, even in the House, and we have people like Marjorie Green Taylor and Lauren Boebert. We have other people like creators that are very influential on YouTube, and really pushing the narrative that this is supposed to be a Christian nation and that we've somehow lost our way. And they use that to weaponize and attack people who aren't like them. So I'm making a video and I'm working on this subject of, was this nation really founded on Christian, Judeo-Christian, Old Testament, New Testament stuff, or is it something different? And so part of this process of me doing the research and pulling up stuff from what these people in the 18th, is that late 18th century, early 19th century, what were their thoughts on how should we run this country, and should we do it the same way that Europe is doing with church and state? And to me, their answers were resounding no. But I was reading through, actually listening to the audiobook, Thomas Paine's Age of Reason, and oh my God, did I get so many good ideas and so many good quotes for this video. So I just wanted to go live and touch on that stuff with you and get your thoughts on this too, Derek. What's your thoughts on all this?
You can tell he's a reasoned guy, and he's calling a spade a spade. He is talking about the Mythologist, and I've only listened to 20 minutes of it before we went live. I was like, let me play this. He talks about how the Christians are practically mythologists as well. They just go right into the vein of the rest of the Mythologists and how they're kind of adapting and co-opting and whatnot. And some of the details you might listen to and go, well, we've learned since then, maybe that's not technically the case about certain things. And those are the things that apologists will look at and go, you can hand wave, forget this guy, he got that part wrong, or he got that detail mistaken. This happens all the time. You find something that the person may get wrong or mistaken about certain details. Imagine, when was this guy around? 200-300 years ago?
18th century. Yeah.
So the 1700s, this guy's around. And how much have we learned since then about?
Yeah, he has no internet. He's got probably a local library, and he's operating with letters and writing letters to people, and that's his way of doing. Can you imagine how hard it would be to do research in this time period? So you have to deal with whatever. They had the printing press was available, so there was mass printing. It's just but it's not the same as today. It's not like there's Amazon that's going to drop it off at your house. So you got to realize he was limited, but he was also very brilliant, and you could tell he's well researched. He's all over it. He's all over the place. He's talking about Zoroastrian. He's talking about the Greek and Roman stuff. He's talking about all this different stuff, and he's obviously very well Egyptian stuff as well. I don't know how the methodology was back then, because, for example, just to skip ahead, I'll save this for later. But one of his arguments is that Christianity is a parody of the worship of the sun, in which they put a man called Christ in the place of the sun and pay him adoration originally paid to the sun. He's a mythicist.
Mm-hmm.
He was a mythicist, straight up. He thought that Jesus was basically this archetypal, character based on all these other whatever.
Mm-hmm.
He's also really, and weirdly, he thought Moses existed. Because he's talking about Moses is why would you believe this guy who came from a mountain with some tablets, and you're just gonna believe him? What kind of evidence is that? He doesn't question Moses' historicity at all.
I didn't go that far. I got that far, but I didn't go any further whether or not he questioned the historicity of Moses or not. But for the sake of argument, who cares, right? So there was a guy who gets these tablets, and he's like, and this guy says he got them from God up on this mountain. Like, he's like, why didn't any of the Israelites say, no, I didn't see it, I didn't experience it, I didn't, like, how do I know you got these from God? They just accepted that he got these tablets from God. And I guess what it is you could see a rationalist mind at work here trying to make sense of the world. What I find kind of interesting, even in 20 minutes, and this is an 11-hour, let me share, just to tease people, I might as well like share the,
while you're pulling that up, this is the one that I started off with, where he says, I do not believe in the creed professed by the Jewish church, by the Roman church, by the Greek church, by the Turkish church, by the Protestant church, nor by any church that I know of. My own mind is my church. All national institutions of churches, whether Jewish, Christian, Turkish, appear to me no other than human inventions set up to terrify and enslave mankind and monopolize power and profit. Woo! That is hardcore.
Pretty heavy.
This is heavy, man. But yeah, what do you got?
Here's the YouTube link. I'll paste it in the chat. So anybody who might want to go listen, that's as far as I made it, 23 minutes in, before we did this stream. And what I do think is interesting about what he's doing, whether he's inaccurate about this or that type detail, we can come back up. You and me can come back up. Are we doing full screen? Yeah. Is the way he's weighing the evidence, he's not treating this one better or above the rest. And that's important, I think. And that's something that I've noticed in modern day discussions, that, when you're talking to Christian apologists, that they value the New Testament literature above the rest of all the literature that's out there. And that this is somehow the most accurate and whatnot. Any of the academics I've had on, like, show you contradiction. I mean, serious issues between gospels, issues with Paul. I mean, look at like the basic fundamental things, right? I've got a course I'm working on right now. I'm editing for Robin Faith Walsh. Robin talks about the pneuma. She spends more than any other subject on Paul, more time on this issue of what the pneuma is, what the philosophy behind it was, in understanding that in Middle Platonism, in Stoicism, understanding what the pneuma was. And then she asks a question in the course that I think was like, I'm sitting here recording going, oh my God, this is gold. And she's like, look at the letter he has to write to the Corinthians. Look at how much he's correcting them. Look at all the insanity. A guy's having sex with his mother-in-law or stepmom or whatever.
Right.
And these people supposedly have the pneuma of God, the pneuma of Christ. Like, she goes, look at how human this accurate word of God is, and the Spirit of God working in these men. It doesn't look like it's working too well. Do you think it is? And like, dude, it was a question where I was like, we always argue about this and that, comparative mythology, but it's like this pneuma, looking at the letters of Paul that has supposedly filled this church. They're over here. And he's like, hey, do it in an orderly fashion. You guys are acting like crazies over here. Cut it out. I speak in tongues more than all of you, Paul says. But he's looking at this church that just isn't being successful. It's not doing what God's Spirit's supposed to help it do. So the question you have to ask yourself is, does it really have this pneuma, this real power that's actually changing them? And it's like it's a fundamental issue. Like today, you're like, look, if God's church is so good, if God is really behind causing his church and truth and sustaining it all, look at the church, look at the affairs of the church, look at the actions of the people who supposedly have God's Spirit. Can you honestly say that this is acting like something you would imagine if God's Spirit actually filled that it would do? Dude, we get off into some rabbit trail things, but it's just, that's what I'm hearing him kind of do, is look and go, come on, really? Where's the common sense in this? And you can tell he's post-enlightenment in the way that he's thinking. So
yeah, he even says things that you're like, why didn't I think of that? Like, for example, he's talking about the Psalms. In one of the Psalms, actually, I want to pull it up. There's a psalm about being in Babylon. Psalm crying over Babylon. Let's see. Psalm 18. There it is. Found it. I knew that'd be a good way to search it. Let's see. Let's pull this baby up. So this is Psalm 18. It's lament over Babylon. I'm going to pull it up right now. Okay. So it's like, fallen is Babylon the Great. Okay, this isn't the one. Never mind. Okay, anyway, there's a. No, it's not about Babylon. Okay, there's a different psalm where, they're in Babylon crying about a river, and it's called the Psalm of David. Someone might know what I'm talking about, but crying in Babylon. Let's see, by the rivers of Babylon. Okay, now I found Psalm 137. Here it is. Perfect. So, you guys see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So perfect. All right. So here's what it says. By the rivers of Babylon, we sat and wept when we remembered Zion. Okay. Now, for some reason, it doesn't have it here, but like if it's in the text in the Hebrew Bible, right above here, it says a Psalm of David.
Yeah.
Now, Thomas Paine points that out. He goes, "Wait a minute. They're in Babylon, weeping over Zion." That event happened at 697 when Nebuchadnezzar raided them, and like they're in there for like a couple whatever, and I don't know what the year was, 597 I think it was, something like that. So 6th century BCE, right?
Right.
It's like King David's supposed to be 1000 BCE. He's 400 years before this. So you're like, wait a minute, how is the Psalm of David talking about an event that happened? Is it supposed to be a prophecy? So he's like, I'm like, why didn't I think of that? It's such a clear one. And then he gets into the whole prophecy thing, and he was like, the prophecy thing. These are all texts that are written way later, and they're pretending to be from the time from before. But when you actually observe the text and look at the idioms, like he's getting into like the text stuff and saying like some of this stuff is clearly written later. And he says, I think it's all drama. He's like, I think a prophet is more like a playwright, and they're enacting what happened in the past and then pretending to be prophesizing the future. So he talks.
This is the stepping stones toward critical scholarship. That whether he's completely right about all the details or whatever is irrelevant to. You can see the direction in which it's heading. I'm blurry. People are saying, should I try turning off my camera and back on, or see if that works?
I think it's getting a little better. It was for a second. I think it's better now.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, it got blurry. Now it looks good.
A little bit.
Salvation with the super chat. Thank you for the super chat. By the way, super chats, I appreciate them. They helped me make this channel. Was Paine an atheist? He actually opens up the book saying, I believe in God. I believe in one God, he says.
Yeah, he did. And that's why I was like,
he's not an atheist.
He must be a deist, I imagine.
I was going to say you could probably call him a deist.
Yeah.
I know.
So it says Paine's deism, the belief in God, but the eschewing of organized religion is often erroneously confused with atheism.
Right. So the Spinoza type of deism that was popular at the time was that there was a creator. They call him divine providence sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Divine providence is it's divine providence is put it in my cards for me to be wealthy, or divine providence is decided that we're going to win this war. And it's basically like saying like it was in the cards. It was written in the beginning when the universe was set in course, set in motion. Everything was basically pre-planned. That's like this deist, but like God starts everything off and then goes away and has no interference in any human matters at all. Doesn't even care, actually. So that's the deist argument. And that you do have free will, but there's also some things that are just planned, and it's going to happen no matter what. So there's different ways of looking at that, but it's not the same as like the Christian theism or theism. It's not theism, and actually you can. It's almost no different than atheism in the sense that there is no God that's like here right now. Like we're all just here. So deism, atheism. I don't know how you, I don't know how you split those two up, but I guess, yeah, he does clearly say, and you've read that part. You've right off the bat, he says, I believe in one God.
Right.
He's not an atheist.
No, yeah. And there's a lot of people, I think, especially those who are founders of America in terms of our Constitution, that were deist. And so you kind of mentioned the whole point of values and like what is our nation built off of. You could say deist played a significant role in that, which means they cherry picked their ethics and values from both ancient Rome, ancient Greece, Christianity. Like, there's no, it's a weird thing because there's so much back and forth that happens between Christian apologist and skeptic, liberal, secular, humanist, etc., that it's almost like the Christians want to go, you took our values. If it weren't for us, you borrow from us, you owe us, you owe us. And this is the kind of rhetoric, right? But in reality, if the secular person that might be debating or arguing with the person would stop for 1 second because they want to say, no, we didn't. There may be some things that we obviously may have learned and picked up through this process. I consider this whole thing an evolutionary process, including the religions that we've believed in. So I have no shame in saying some of our ethics and morals come from a development of society within particular religious things. However, to pretend the Christians didn't do that to the earlier Greek, Roman, pagan, Persian, Babylonian, Assyrian, Egyptian, and on and on and on, Mesopotamian, to pretend that they didn't borrow or use. So that argument is silly. Don't even get worked up. Granted, go, sure, yeah. Who gives a crap? Your whole religion comes out of the fabric of Jewish and pagan, as the Christians like to use the term, but Jewish and Greco-Roman, Mediterranean fabric. Your shirt, your Christian shirt, was built from things that weren't Christian. So don't act like you've got it made. It's not. We all are borrowing from each other. Cut the crap. There's my thoughts.
Yeah, I agree, and that's another thing. When I'm going into this research, and I'm thinking that I'm about to slam dunk all over these America's a Christian nation thing. It's not. It's the complete opposite. These are deists. These are Epicureans. They're all critical of the Bible. But honestly, I think after looking into the matter, it's a little more nuanced than that. And there are, you have to admit, especially on the state level. On the federal level, I'm going to say it's straight up anti-Christian, anti-government, or anti-church and state all throughout the federal level. But on the state government levels, early on, there's a lot of what's it called when anti-blasphemy laws. So it started off kind of very Christian in some state level senses. Very low on local levels, you had anti-blasphemy laws right off the bat in America. So I'm not going to ignore that so that I can make my point better. I'm bringing that into the video. Like, look, there are some shit that Christians can point to. Not that I agree with it, but like it's true. There were anti-blasphemy laws. We don't have many more though. So I don't know what that has to do with today.
It's like, bro, imagine people came over from China, okay, breaking away from some dictator ruler that wanted to enforce their religious and taxation, etc., onto the people. They come over, they break away from some Chinese philosophy and religion. But you find their constitution has hints of things that they cherry pick from it, and then they get rid of a lot of it that was from it. This is the problem that I think we're seeing is you have these Europeans who come over and establish kind of a civilization here. They are obviously coming from Christian nations.
Right.
They're post-Enlightenment rationalist thinkers who are cherry picking what they find more moral things from Christianity, but also saying, scratch that ugly religious organizational stuff. We're done with that. Nobody's taxing us. Nobody's controlling us based on religion. Right. So that's what I think we're seeing. And what I think the big pushback oftentimes is ones who are fundamentalist or something like that in America specifically, or or those who are Christian nationalists who are like, we need our nation to become a Christian again, as if it ever really was a Christian nation. No, but they can find these little, well, why did they say that? That's a Christian saying. And it's like, dude.
Did you know that In God We Trust is from the 19th century? It's not from, that's not an early thing. That's a later thing.
Right. It wouldn't shock me. I'm just making the point, like,
no, but you're right. You're right. So what they can do if they want to argue that this is a Christian nation, their best way of doing it would to go at the local and state level and say, look, we had anti-blasphemy laws, we had this, we had that, and then try to argue that those are good things or something, which is stupid.
Well, but I mean, you could go and spank your wife at the public square down at
they can bring all that up all they want, and I can say, sure, that was all there. Those things sucked. That's why we got rid of them. However, what they can't say is they can't say at the federal level the Constitution and Declaration of Independence and those documents are somehow Christian documents, because they're not.
Right.
And then, so that's going to be the point of my video, is to lay that out and like go through actual quotes by the founding fathers. I have a whole bunch of them. I actually have some here that I've showed on the screen before on this channel, but Thomas Paine is really what I want to react to if we can.
Yeah.
And obviously anyone who wants to throw in some super chats, I really would, obviously would appreciate. Or just comments, or just, I'm looking at the comments as much as I can. I can't read them all because I would just be looking at the screen all day.
Some people are seeing Yahweh in my blurred beard, they said. So it happens. That's another thing. It happens. It's not a phantom. It's really Yahweh. So
Thomas Paine said, the Christian system of religion is an outrage on common sense. Woo! And a lot of people will say, like, Thomas Paine, he's not one of the real founding fathers. But, like, that's going to be a problem when I bring up in my video how much the founding fathers loved Thomas Paine, how much they wrote about him, how much they were influenced by him. Like, Thomas Paine was like, you could almost argue, and there might be more, this is obviously a nuance, but, like, you can almost argue that Thomas Paine is his ideal state is manifested through America. Like, what he wants in a nation finally comes true. If that makes sense. Like, his idea of like dividing, like separating church and state and having a country that's based on like freedom of speech and all that stuff. This is what Thomas Paine was writing about, and then it happened. Like that, can you imagine being him in that time period and seeing everything unfold and being like, holy shit, it's actually going to happen. This is the first time in human history that we've ever had a nation that was didn't have some sort of priesthood behind it.
Right.
That's never happened. And
I do like, I
ever do that.
I love the title that you made this, My Mind is My Church. And that's true for me. I had a guy who wrote me an email today, and I'm eating breakfast, and I get emails all the time, Neil. I mean, a lot. And this guy made a YouTube video for me, like a 21-minute one. He wanted to know a little more about my background and what do I believe, right? Because I'm always picking apart bad religion, picking apart bad beliefs or things that fall apart or inconsistencies and this and that. And that's an interesting question to ask, because I think what I believe consistently changes with what I'm learning. But at the end of the day, the fact that my mind is my church. I've said this before when like,
I love that.
People are like, people think you have no meaning. And it's like, I found more meaning, more value by leaving these constructions we call religion. And they imagine, well, if you don't believe in God, like even Thomas Paine probably wouldn't be able to wrap his head around where we're at on our conclusion, right? Or where I'm at specifically. I can't speak for you. But like finding the value and meaning in this life, in the people around us, and my experiences in the here and now. That's where I would find my meaning. And in getting into ethics, like cherry pick things. There are things Jesus said that I could stand behind. I can at least get the gist. For the poor, for example, the idea of the poor and giving them hope or trying to help stand up for them. However, I don't necessarily want to say, oh, what's in the afterlife? They had this idea like once this is over, or when the kingdom of God comes in, the Christian message eventually becomes like, once you die, don't worry, you'll get rewarded. But at first it sounds like the kingdom's coming sometime any day now here. Don't worry, the meek will inherit this earth, like not this afterlife heaven. It's going to be earth here. So those who are here that are poor, you're going to be rewarded and stuff. There's some good about helping the people who are less fortunate and stuff like that. So I cherry pick my ethics on those things. But it's my mind and no one else controls it. That's why I fight against fundamentalism. The guy in the video said, hey, I'm spiritual. I think there's something going on. And okay. I mean, that whoop-de-doo. I don't have a problem with that at all. It's when that imposes itself on everyone else. Like true freedom. I think Thomas Paine was wanting that true freedom
and he
belief.
And he stresses in the book that, like, if you can't see it with your own eyes, why should you believe? Like, why would a rational God want you to believe in something that you can't see with your own eyes? To go against your own logical, to go against all logic and just throw yourself over a cliff of logic just to accept something that doesn't. He says it in his book, something along the lines of this: if I have every right to doubt if I don't see it with my own eyes, I have every right to doubt, and he's right.
Like he's read a lot, though, you can tell, because when he starts to talk about these other myths and the people who adhere to them, he called them mythologist. Yeah. He kept calling them mythologist. And then he says, and these Christians, they are also mythologists who follow suit with the rest of the mythologists. He uses that term out at the beginning, at least 23 minutes in. And the fact that he probably came across several claims and realized, wow, there's all sorts of gods doing all sorts of stuff. I don't believe those. And maybe he was raised a Christian and then realized after reading, wising up about how many claims are out there, and then went, unless I see it, unless I'm experiencing it, unless that is me who knows and saw, don't tell me your experience, your vision, your revelation is true to me. That's not okay. I'm not trusting another human's experience or another human's revelation or word on what happened on something that's counterintuitive to what I experience and know. And this is what I tell Christians all the time. And they go, what would it take, Derek? What would it take for you to believe? And, the answer, Matt Dillahunty says, and he's right, God would know what it would take. But if I actually try to give a reasonable answer, my honest, reasonable answer would be, you remember the story about doubting Thomas? Like, Jesus was willing to pop up for him, right? And have him feel the wounds on his side and all. The problem is there's so many things that's too general and too easy to just throw out there. But yeah, like a real, actual visual experience of something and that could still be down to hallucination, right? So, you're just tripping. Or like resurrecting my grandmother or grandfather who's been dead for at least a few years now.
Yeah.
And like, there's ways that you could do this, but Derek, why are you expecting a sign? In fact, bro, let me mention one more thing.
Sure.
Reading the commentary, the hermeneutic commentary on Acts recently, I've been engaging in this, I like to call historical fictional narrative story of the early church. It's a mythological origin story of how the church began. Apologists make it as much as they can historical. They need it. It needs to be true and what really happened, because without it, we don't have the actual story of how the church began. We have the gospel narrative of Jesus's death, but how the church began and survived, we don't have if you don't trust this book. And I'm reading this book and I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, there are so many counterintuitive, miraculous things, from people being healed with handkerchiefs and aprons to shipwrecks to Paul getting bit by a poisonous snake and the islanders calling him a god. And they don't correct it in Acts. They just said they believed he was a god. And then they move on. They don't ever say, hey, man, he's not a god. It's kind of weird. But over and over, all these like unbelievable things that Thomas Paine would probably go, yep, check. And I'm looking at that and I'm going, then I was reading on a website, Christian website, that was listing these miracles. And the next paragraph, after they get through all these miracles, they give a disclaimer. And guess what the Christian disclaimer was. I want you to guess.
I have no idea.
Try. Just try. You can be wrong. I don't care.
If you don't believe it, then you're damned or something.
Nope. It was now I understand that all these miracles happened in this story in the book of Acts, and it happened for them. Don't expect God to be a genie and do these things for you.
Okay.
Okay. Immediately, they're already putting fire control over the absurdity
Right.
that is loaded in this book of like, the Christian believes this is true. This really happened. Then they already are putting out the fire with a fire extinguisher of their own work by saying, hey, don't get your hopes up. This God does miracles when God wants to.
Right.
You can't read Christian literature without seeing over and over. And then what's interesting, I think Pat Lowenger's in the chat.
Yeah.
Like Pat will tell you, go look at the Saints cult, right? Which he was impressed by your recent video, The Death Cult of the Saints. But
central
listen,
to Christianity.
Their miracle claims were so over the top that even when Protestants came on the scene, they were like, no, that's BS. Even the Protestants called BS.
Apocryphal, it's different. Right.
They attacked their own church, and then eventually rationalism took a blade to the New Testament, and then Christian claims were put under fire by Christians themselves. So anyway, there's so many fun things to get into.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true.